Beautiful people, it's me, EL, the columnist here at Blackout Magazine. And let me tell y'all something. Y'all are going to tap into this conversation today. So we're not gonna waste no time. I'm gonna let my guests introduce themselves and we're gonna get right into it.
What's going on, good people? Honored to be with you. I am David Johns, except that if you are white, it's Dr. David Johns. That's my personal form of reparations. I am the head restanet. I have the pleasure of being the quarterback of the team at NBJC, the National Black Justice Collective, the nation's only civil rights organization intentionally and unapologetically at the intersections of acknowledging that our blackness is queer in this country and context. And I'm happy to turn it over to my sibling in the work and in the movement, Dr. Marcus Anthony Hunter, aka Dr. Blackness.
I'll just let he already started it. I'm your professor here, sociologist, author, academic, and corner hashtag Black Lives Matter, and most proudly a board member of the National Black Justice Collective.
Hey, now that is a way to introduce yourself. Thank y'all so much for being here, rocking with me today. We just gonna pipe right into it. Now, we've been hearing a lot lately about this new anti-weaponization fund, right? Uh, from the government, which is basically setting aside money for people who feel like they have been unfairly targeted by the administration. And so when we got this new anti-weaponization fund making headlines where the government is basically paying out folks who feel they were unfairly targeted by politicians, when you look at that and then look at communities that have been asking for repair for decades, what does this tell us about whose complaints actually get taken seriously in this country?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we see is that there's a hierarchy of pain and trauma. There's a hierarchy of victims. There's a hierarchy of humanity. There's a hierarchy of race. And all those hierarchies are really being reflected back through that anti-weaponization fund. The bigger thing, which brother Dr. David Johns has beautifully put together in his own Substack, which I recommend everyone follow, is really about what it reveals is that the machinery for reparative justice is ready and available. And so the benefit of this foray and fiasco known as the Anti-Weaponization Fund is that overnight, the executive branch can authorize, come up with, and find at least $8 billion to deal with the complaints, to deal with the claims, to deal with unjust treatment. It just need not be a moral inversion of what reparations is, which is holding the government accountable for crimes and harms it has done to the population. This is holding the government accountable for holding criminals accountable. So that is a weird inversion of the moral imperative of reparations, and at the same time deeply shows that the gears and the machinery, the accelerator, the brakes, the engine, the throttle, you get what I'm going with here, are all ready for this car that can easily take off should the president press drive.
I think all of that's right, and I would love to share the Substack link. It's Dr. David Johns with you. But I want to do two things. One is a part of the strategy of those who are invested in hoarding power and profiting from the pain of Black people, anchored by anti-Blackness. One of their strategies is to convince us that we don't know what we know, sacredly as it relates to not the tech bro AI, but African ancestral intelligence. And some of it is that they use words as if they don't already have meanings. And so I appreciate the journalist in you naming it what the current occupant of the Oval Office wants it to be referred to. But based on what we know, and for those who have not encountered Dr. Hunter's written work, I encourage you to pick up his book, Radical Reparations. For those who don't know, the core of what reparations are, have been, and should be, this fund is a slush fund. It's given hush money. It's actually not there's no harm to be repaired when we're talking about insurrectionists. A failed insurrectionist who attempted a coup on this country as we celebrate our 250th year anniversary. So there's just a part of me in this moment that is thinking about being an elementary school teacher, and not wanting us to make things more complicated. I think the spirit of Iyanla saying make things plain in this moment is also in the room. So I just want us to be precise with regard to how we engage in this conversation so we don't fall into their traps. And then the second thing to Dr. Hunter's point is he asked this powerful question on my podcast, Teach the Babies. The episode is up now. When we were talking about, well, the question he essentially posed to us is, what if slavery is the root of all of our ills? Not only those that Black people experience in this country and throughout the diaspora, but all of us. And in helping to anchor that question, what he did was walk us through what it looked like to be born in 1908. Both sides of it. He talked about a white baby taken to a marketplace, watching Black children their own age being sold on an auction block for less than the produce that their mother might have just purchased, desensitized before they might be able to speak or at least name what they are witnessing. And then a Black baby also born to a loving family on a plantation, never meeting their father because he was sold the moment that they arrived, maybe spending 5 years with their mother before she was gone too. Both babies, Dr. Hunter implores us to remember, were enslaved, because you cannot make an entire society participate in something that immoral without enslaving everyone in it, both the watchers and the watched, both the buyers and the bought. And so I just want us to take a holistic view to appreciating our shared history and being as precise as possible when talking about the ways that people who are hoarding power are continuing to grift.
That's deep. I last year wrote a column about DNA and how how what happened before I was even consumed. You know what I'm saying?
You talking
Still,
about Dr. Joy DeGruy?
yeah,
Yeah, that we carry the trauma cellularly. Absolutely.
exactly. So
We
that
talk
just
about
resonated with me.
post-traumatic slave syndrome, but it's important for us to acknowledge that we are not post many things, including because we have not yet received the repair that is needed given the harm, the continued harm.
De-
Absolutely.
Definitely. And we were talking about language, and it's funny how language works, right? So when certain groups complain, it's called grievance or weaponization, and they get a fund. And when marginalized groups ask for help, it's often called a handout or too radical. How do we change the way people talk about the issue so everyone's pain is treated as valid?
Yeah, very first thing is first, I believe that Black people, African Americans in particular, one of the things that this moment is teaching us is the evidence of what happens and what is possible when reparations is not your North Star. If you allow home ownership or education or integration to become the North Star, it means that your own healing and repair is on the back burner. It's on the list somewhere, and ultimately, America has demonstrated that at most you might get three things on any given list in any given generation. And so it's not even been in the top three. And now what we have is, a situation where we can look at all of the levels of inequity, which is why we do National Equity Week, is that people will explain that inequity, for example, the Black-white wealth gap. Many explanations might use dysfunction or pathology as a way to explain it, except the Freedmen's Bank was established in 1865 and had upwards of $1 billion of Black people's money in less than 6 years. And so that means that Black people believe in saving money, they just don't trust banks anymore. And it is not about a pathology, it's about a pattern of harm and evidence of distrust. I think the other thing around part of what I think repair and reparations are around is that slavery is not just our narrative as descendants or Black people, it is America's narrative. That when we get to certain things, a lot of times what we get caught up in is pain, harm, trauma. Those are important. And also as African people, the power of story. that there is a story about America. It invented itself in recent memory 250 years ago while it was dispossessing native people of their lands and enslaving black Africans. These things were already a part of the story before it revealed itself to the world as a coherent idea or entity. And so part of what's important here is that when we talk about it, we're really talking about the origin story of America, which brings up the broader question is, if injury is in your origin story, why haven't y'all taken the time out to heal those injuries? You as a nation are playing on the field with ACL tears and broken knees and needing hip surgeries. That's what we are, which is why whenever we've engaged with any group in any meaningful way, if we think about Vietnam or Korea or all of these places, it has been mixed results from World War I all the way forward because we are an injured so-called superpower playing on a field, telling everyone else about their injuries, paying for them to attend to them, while all of this time we got crutches, we're in a walker, sometimes somebody has to push us around in a wheelchair because as a nation, the level of injury and brokenness is very severe, and we're told if we try to pay attention to it, we're dragging our feet or we're complaining or we're bringing up the past, and it's like we want the body to be well. We want the body politic to be well. We want to be making our choices around who we're electing, what we're participating in from a place of wellness, from a place of thriving, not from a place of surviving. And I think that's one of the big tensions that we see, that with the lack of reparations as a North Star, the nation is in strict survival mode. Thriving has yet to be unlocked as a collective experience because reparations continues to be at the bottom of the list of needs.
I think that's right. And I just wanted to make sure that I got the quote right because for me, Dr. Hunter invited in response to your question, EL, Uncle Jimmy James Baldwin, who said, "It took many years of vomiting up all the filth that I had been taught about myself and half believed before I was able to walk on the earth as though I had a right to be here." And so for me, a part of what Dr. Hunter demonstrated in his answer is what Black feminists have always told us to do, which is to name a thing. It is to expose the matrix of domination, the signs, systems, and symbols that allow white, what maybe a decade ago I would have said is supremacy, but I now know it to be mediocrity, to be omnipresent yet hyper invisible. And a part of how this works is that we expose how language, the English language in particular, is used as a tool for colonization. And in this moment, I just want anybody who is struggling to make sense of what we're talking about or to ground this to think about the fact that we might not be where we are June 8th, 2026, if we had listened to Kimberly Crenshaw, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, who warned us of the attacks on critical race theory, who warned us of the bastardization of a term that has been used to name how it is that we get closer to freedom, to do exactly what I just named the Black feminists told us to do, and we failed to do that. Those of us who profess to care about Black women, to trust Black women, and to love Black women, and we should acknowledge that that is a failure that we should be learning from, and then that lesson is that we should continue to be as precise as possible about language and just ask questions about how we arrived at things. For example, I'll end with this. When people often don't interrogate the reality that there is one way to refer to a grown boy in this country. He at some point becomes a mister. There are at least 3 ways to refer to a grown girl. She can be MISS, Miss, she can be Mrs. MS, or she can be MRS. Now, those words are not arbitrary. They're not synonyms. They each have different designations that allow certain people to have access to or be denied access to economic, social, political, and other forms of capital. That is by design. A part of that design is to privilege white men who then have access to property that their wives might have had if they were on the continent of Africa before colonization, matrilineal and patrilineally. That's about power hoarding. It's about getting away from community. The very things that we know enable us to survive, especially when we think about the ongoing exposure to trauma. So my hope is that I'm coloring a different part of the coloring book and naming the importance of us reclaiming African ways of being and naming things for what they are.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Hunter, your book makes it clear that reparations aren't just about, and I If y'all don't got it, y'all need to get it. Y'all need to get it. All right. See, y'all need to get it. Your book makes it clear that reparations aren't just about handing out money. It's way bigger than that.
Yeah.
For the average person who hears reparations and immediately thinks of the tax dollars, how do you explain what
Yeah.
real holistic repair actually would look like in everyday life?
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for the support of the work that you had without even knowing we were going to meet. Shout out always to Dr. David for the love and for supporting it being going out to the community and everything. I really appreciate it. Uh, Very first thing to make it straightforward, slavery is a total institution. It covered every aspect of your life from birth to death. Therefore, reparations, which are the response to slavery, must also be a total package. And so part of what we must understand is that we know enslavement wasn't just an economic harm or economic existence or economic policy. It was also a mental health policy. It was also an educational policy. It was also a wealth building policy. It was also a human idea. So therefore, it was also a language. It was also a spiritual cosmology. It was also a religion. You must worship these ideas. And part of what we talk about with the elevation of whiteness is that then you receive signs, signals, and symbols that you are allowed to worship as a way to elevate and participate in this human hierarchy. So any form of repair must attend to every version, every aspect of the very system that it is intending to repair. So first is the universal spiritual law of alignment. That's the very first thing that my book is really trying to get at. The second thing is that I think as enticing and tempting as a dollar is, even though its very amount and value is declining every single day, right? But as enticing as it is, those who are coming from the descendant class must also resist the urge to completely monetize and quantify the pain and harm and trauma of that very institution. That not all of this is about paying you with a check. A check is one aspect, or direct compensation is one aspect, because that's how policy understands harm. Oftentimes there's going to be a dispensation of monetary resources if there's a policy related. And also we want to make sure whatever benefits are coming are across the entire spectrum, because the local government facilitated slavery. The municipal government facilitated slavery. The federal government created constitutional amendments to sanction and constitutionalize it. So we're thinking about all of the levels, and therefore we're thinking about all of the piles of accountability we have to sort through: political, P, I, intellectual, L, legal, E, economic, S, spiritual, spatial, and social. And those seven, which seven, by the way, a number of completion, represent, I think, a total package of repair that aligns with the totalizing institution of enslavement.
Thank you. Dr. Johns,
Yes, ma'am.
when we talk about fixing the harms of the past, we have to make sure we aren't leaving anyone out. How do we make sure the push for reparations specifically includes and protects Black, queer, and trans folks like myself, who often deal with a whole lot of extra layers of stuff?
I appreciate that question, and my body had a visceral reaction when you named me Dr. Johns. My mouth went to say yes, ma'am. So I should ask, what are your pronouns? Because I want to be respectful as we continue to engage in this discussion.
He, him, I am a Black trans man.
Okay, see, that's why this is important. I want to model for folks that this is how we do that. So thank you, EL. I think the answer for me is we honor the spirit of Fannie Lou Hamer, who taught us that none of us are free unless and until all of us are free. To my earlier point about reclaiming African ways of being, we appreciate that it is a lie from the pit of white mediocrity that we are choosing to be not African, that we are choosing to be queer in the way that they have perverted the term that so many people are forced to digest in the spirit of James Baldwin. And for me, this is really a Sambufu Some Reminder that what she wrote is that in her village in West Africa, the words lesbian and gay didn't exist, but the word gatekeeper did. And more importantly, gatekeepers hold sacred space between our ancestors and the members of our community. And so my hope is that this is a beseechment for us to not do the work of our colonizers, to take the lesson from In Vogue, to free our minds, to again reclaim a knowledge that everything began with us. Dr. Hunter will often remind us that like we are the original influencers. And often I find myself in conversation with our siblings who just won't allow themselves to get the queerness of it all as it relates to African descendants, but they will accept it for our Native and Indigenous siblings. And my response is, so then where did they get it, right? Like if everything comes from us, it didn't just skip us. And so my hope is that we can vomit up some of the worst parts of what we've been forced, fed, and hold space for all of us to get free in the key of Fannie Lou Hamer. Does that answer the question?
It
Yeah,
does, Reverend Doctor.
yeah, I love it. Um, it feels like a lot of people get defensive when the word reparations comes up. How do we build a movement that gets everyday folks, people who might be struggling to pay their own bills, to understand that fixing these deep rooted issues actually makes the whole country better for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. Very first thing, and this is around framing and how we talk about things. Uh, I believe that our ancestors and the spirit give us permission to talk about reparations in this context as also inheritance. What is going on in the community, black queer community, across every version of how we show up, is that we are always operating without our trust fund. We don't even get to know that we have one. That is basically what reparations is saying, that there is an outstanding balance that you come into the world with the government owing you. And we've been made to set up a life that anticipates we're never going to see it. So that's when the arsenal of words like not ever, never, doesn't, won't, can't, impossible, all of those negative words then shroud over your inheritance and your trust fund. Except in my life, I've had the chance to meet and interact and engage with some trust fund people, and what they know is it pays on time every time. They build a life around it. You know, when certain kinds of recessions come, then they already have it set up to pay their rent for a year. That is the kind of money that we are not having access to, but it's actually our birthright. And so I think it's important when we start talking about it, not just sheerly as policy or something to vote for, but as your birthright, as your trust fund, as your inheritance. Are you going after it like that? Are you going after it and understanding it that way? I think if we start tapping into that understanding, we would find that the Pew poll that found 77% of Black people supported reparations, we would find 100%. Because ultimately, if we're only in C plus range as a people, we can't expect America to be in A range. We must get into A range, and where that A range comes from, which is why we do National Equity Week in DC out of the National Black Justice Collective, is because the map to the north that led many people out of bondage in the South was often braided atop enslaved people's heads by the braiders on the plantation. Those braiders look like and sound like a lot of our hairstylists, our beauticians today. If we were to take a quick poll of them, we would find that they fall not only in a queer demographic, but are usually either Black women or trans or gay Black men, right? That isn't a new thing. That's not a 2026 thing. That's a Africans in America thing. And so what does it mean for those folks of us who have participated in mapping freedom on people's heads and to not see ourselves as a part of the story of this experience and also to be at the front lines of receiving reparations?
It seems like overnight, DEI, Black History, LGBTQI plus inclusivity became public enemy number one for a lot of politicians. From where you sit, what's really driving this? Is it just politics as usual, or is there something deeper going on with how people feel about the country changing?
Doctor, do you want me to go first on the double Dutch ropes? Or you want to go?
Yeah, you go. You got it.
Yeah, EL, my visceral response in processing your question is to reject a part of the premise and the frame of it, which is to suggest that this is new. When I think again about us being in the 250th anniversary of this country, a part of the truth that we should be telling is that it is mired with our blood. That is the red on the flag, right? It is African blood that has enabled so much of what this country purports and claims credit for and wants to be celebrated for is the direct result of those of us who are still struggling to survive in a country where we enable so many people to thrive. And I want us to be clear about that when we think about the ways that whiteness has always worked. Dr. Hunter talked earlier about the elevation of whiteness as a necessity in this hierarchy that would allow some to subjugate another human being and to convince themselves that they should do that, it was their birthright to do that, that they um, deserve a reward for that. All of that is uh, what the founders of this country, the conquerors of this country, um, held held at that point in time and still hold. And it is what we are seeing with regard to power hoarding. So much of what has become a national focus in terms of news, those of us who have been paying attention, who have the luxury of paying attention to policy cycles, saw the storms form before there was ever a drop of rain. Too often we don't think about the South until it's too late. This is the Andre 3000. The South has something to say, and we should be listening. Black people are still disproportionately concentrated in the South. That is also true for Black LGBTQIA plus people, especially our trans, non-binary, non-conforming siblings who often don't have the luxury of being out in ways that are too often celebrated in June. That is a part of the legacy. The failed history teacher turned Governor Ronald Deion DeSantis tested so many of the policy tax that have been levied such that they can hoard power. I'm talking specifically about the overwhelming number of anti-LGBTQ, anti-Black, anti-trans bills, to be more precise, that have been introduced and codified over the last two legislative cycles. I'm saying all of this because a part of how we got here is, again, the games that they play. Black folks who purport to care about Black people not watching Don't Say Gay because we assume that that was about white LGBTQIA plus people, not us and our babies, not Black youth who are suffering suicidality and mental health challenges at rates that no other group of children are. This is by design, and we weren't asleep at the wheel in that regard. I would make a similar challenge to our progressive white LGBTQ colleagues who are quick to jump in the ring when it's about protecting marriage equality, but don't have the same energy when we're talking about bodily autonomy or addressing any of the issues that Black folks with reproductive systems encounter, regardless of how their bodies might be counted in the politics. So this is a really long way of saying three things. One, this shit ain't new, right? I'm using that term precisely. People can't say that I'm ignorant because I got multiple degrees that I earned. Two, a part of how whiteness works is to divide and conquer us. It is to suggest that, again, that some of us can get free without all of us getting free, and we should listen to Black women who love us, like Fannie Lou Hamer, who said that will never happen. And then the third thing is to remain committed to showing up in community. What I know is that they don't want us to have these conversations. They don't want us to be connected to each other, which is again why it is so important for us this week to be gathering in DC, occupied territory, to center joy, to continue to demand that our elected officials do the jobs that we've sent them to do, work on our behalf, not to help other people who already have a whole lot of unearned power and privilege continue to hoard it, and to do it in the spirit of our ancestors, folks like Marsha Payne and Amon Johnson, who had the spirit that Dr. Hunter talked about when she showed up and said, this check is due, and I'm not going to stop asking for it until you give me what I'm owed.
I love it. All right, Dr. Hunter, did you want to chime in?
Period.
I love it. I love it. Oh man. Okay, so we talk a lot about passing laws and winning elections, but you both talk a lot about healing. Why is racial and community healing an important right now, especially before we all head to the polls? What does that healing actually look like in a regular neighborhood?
Yeah, I love that question because when I was in school, there was still a version of civic engagement, civic history that was taught. And so I discovered early on this word that we don't hear a lot anymore, but it was often called the body politic. That is how the voters, the people who participate in democracy, were understood. So we start thinking about enslavement of other human beings as a dis-ease, as an illness of the mind, a mental health condition, a sociopathic, psychopathic tendency, like all of these different things that have to be true in order for that many people to participate in the trafficking of millions and millions of people, boys, women, children, and girls. Uh, and so I say that as an idea to say that I think a lot around this as a question of, how do we deal with pain? How do we deal with trauma? Why that's important is because pain and trauma, any licensed therapist will be able to attest to this better than I could, is that it distorts our sense of reality and our sense of choice. It makes it harder for us to know all of our full range of choice and options because we're hurting so badly. We're in so much pain. So the first thing we want to do if we're in pain is reach for relief. What is the thing that's going to give me immediate relief? What we've learned in this life is that there's a variety of over the counter, behind the counter, different counters, alcohol counters, dispensary counters, a lot of counters we can go to in order to reach for immediate relief. And what happens is that that immediate relief only lasts for a little while. So then we have our family members who get caught up in addiction because then you have to follow it up with another round of relief, another round of relief, another because the government is not governing itself around accountability. So you're not just simply self-medicating because you get off on it. It's because there's so much pain and trauma that you are exposed to and living with that you need to understand that you have a range of responses that are available to you. So you can, look for ways to heal yourself, which is one, looking to respond rather than react is the first thing, because they are not the same thing. Two, to understand that the struggle you are having is not just simply because of your not doing, it is also because of what has been done, right? And so I want us to understand this is we were just happened to be in Tulsa last weekend for the 105th commemoration of the Tulsa Race Massacre. What that place always illustrates is that Black people were investing in themselves. Black people were building things. Black people were business owners. Black people were teachers. Black students were in class learning. And that in and of itself was such a fear creating exercise that it was destroyed and then erased, not only nationally, but locally as well. There are many native Tulsans who are descendants who will tell you that they never knew that that happened until very recently. And so that is to say to many of us that if we start understanding that underneath all of what ails us, whether it's our ADHD diagnosis, our PTSD diagnosis, our post traumatic slave syndrome, whatever these different things are, that they're rooted in a national sickness that has impacted us before we got here and when we leave. And until such time, the nation and government that constitutionalized and sanctioned your harm attends to it, which the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment give Congress the authority to attend to, okay, in various ways. Until such time that happens, people will continue to reach for the immediate relief. They're going to reach for the purple Kool-Aid and the lean. They're going to reach for the mindless television. Why do I know that? Because I reach for mindless television. You know what I mean? Why do I know that? Because I am a descendant. I understand what it means to be a part of a place that intentionally is designed to make you sick and disappear yourself. Okay, that is what we're in. So when I talk about healing, it is understanding the reason why Ayanla's Fix My Life resonates is because she is highlighting conditions that resonate across Black families. Why are they resonating across Black families? Because we all have a shared origin story that is rooted in harm that had been done to us and that we continue to reenact as a community.
Can I want to, yes, EL, is that okay if I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
All of this is resonating profoundly within me. And I want one of our collective goals, a form of reparations that all of us enjoy, being to come back into our body. This is where Dr. Hunter started. One of the things that I celebrated at this point in my life, being 44, having the privilege to be incredibly selfish in ways that white America will tell you that we don't have the luxury of doing. It's being centered and aligned such that, as Dr. Hunter said, I can slow down and ensure that when I'm making decisions, I'm doing so when there's alignment between my head and my heart and my body and my spirit, and I'm not doing it from a position of duress. What so many of us know based on our lived experience, even if we don't have access to the terms, is that there's a physiological cost to dealing with anti-blackness, having prolonged exposure to poverty, the stress that comes with being black, and insert everything else in America. There's a study that talked about one of the implications of prolonged exposure to poverty is almost like every day being sleep deprived. You cannot make sound decisions when you are sleep deprived, when you are stressed, when you are not only, as you talked about, epigenetically suffering from inherited trauma, but you're being exposed to it because of genocides in multiple countries and continents. All of this matters, in part because when you are not grounded and aligned, they will convince you that you don't know what you know. So, for example, let's not forget that they created a whole term, dryptomania, to convince us that our desire to be free was somehow not natural, was somehow not African, was somehow not native. We know the things that we need, and a part of what we need is to be healthy. That should go in concert with happy and whole. And so, in this regard, I want to offer three things by way of resources. One is The Body Keeps the Score. This is by Bresso Vanderkolk, and there are other folks. I think Deborah, I don't want to speak on her last name, Roberts, I think is a journalist, but there's a Black woman that has written a book similar. And then I mentioned Sambufu Some earlier, but Maladoma Some talks to us about the importance of gathering in community to grieve. We don't even get the chance to grieve anymore. We know this is why it's important for us when a member of our community passes, for us to show up in community. We aren't even talking about the implications of COVID and what we lost not being able to gather in person. And so it's important for us to again, be centered, to go to African AI in that regard, and to develop some of these practices. And very much related to that is this other book, Tending Grief. This is by Camille Sparta Barton. This again is about us doing things that we know are important for us to do, that too often get packaged and commercialized as things that really privileged white women get to do, like go to yoga or go to therapy. I want us to know that we are required to ensure that our minds and our bodies, our spirits are well so we can get closer to freedom. And if you are a member of our community who does not have access to a good therapist, that means someone that requires you to do work outside of the session, somebody that requires you to be honest with yourself, then please reach out to us at NBJC. We want to connect you to someone through our partnership with the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. We celebrate that over the last 3 years, we've been able to connect more than 600 members of our community, primarily young people, to free culturally competent mental health support.
Licensed.
We are owed that. Licensed. Actually, licensed and credentialed.
Yeah.
No Shire Bryant's over here. We want our people to be well.
Let's go. I love it. I love it. Yo, that I gotta get those books. Um
I will send them to you after this conversation. Yep.
oh, thank you. Y'all are a blessing to my life right now. Because I to what you were saying, like I had those discussions with my wife and with my therapist when I realized, like, so one thing happened to make me start looking at what my mindset was on, right? Because I grew up in poverty, and my mother was always getting eviction notices, right? And so our rental company changed, and there was a mix up. So I came home one day and there was a notice on the door. And it was like I went back to being that kid who was trying to, you know what I'm saying, trying to navigate
Yep.
where we was gonna go next, right? And then that sparked off a whole thing about I was really living in survival
Yep.
on every level, and so that really resonated with me. All right,
Do you remember how old you were, EL, when that happened? That childhood memory?
13.
13. Yeah, this is again why it's important for us to get up under the things that they export to us. Too many of us joke about childhood trauma not being exactly that, are worthy of us dealing with. And so my prayer is that all of us do the very selfish thing of enlisting all of the support, again, credentialed license support, so that we can heal and name the things that we aren't even aware of that are ailing us, because we deserve to thrive and experience joy. The kind of joy I hope people were able to see Queen Jean, our
Right.
trans
Congratulations.
Tony
Yes.
Hurst remaking, creative, also to be clear, a fierce ass advocate and organizer. We deserve that kind of joy that allows you to do the thing that you were purposed to do, in spite of what people, even in your community, the barriers that they might have erected in real time, for you to again get the flowers that you deserve, in a dress that you made, feeling fabulous. All of us deserve to have those kind of moments more routinely and more regularly. So I pray that we heal in order so that we can have them.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to that, one, thank you so much, EL, for sharing that. And if I may touch that story just a little bit, is to say part of what happens in the Black experience is that we have a real time experience that we're having, but also a narrative that is repeating itself. And that is enslaved people were without stability, period. To be enslaved is to be destabilized,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Therefore, any person of that lineage of experience who experiences any sense of destabilization is even more destabilized, right? Because you're holding on to your sanity, it's not being given to you. So as a result, anything that comes up that creates an obstacle around it, this is why, for example, mental health is such an intense crisis amongst Black people, because we're coming into a narrative from a destabilized position already. We're not supposed to be in the story. Let's just make it clear. Yet here we are. And so what happens is there will be a series of things that come around that unmoor us, that dislodge us from the story, that don't include us, and then feed into what can become a whole experience where we opt out, where we think we don't matter, where we start feeding a narrative to ourselves that makes us feel like we're not worthy of love. Because again, reparations is a love story, not about white people loving Black people, but Black people loving themselves enough to demand publicly and to tell publicly, these are the things that were done to me. Don't cry for me, pay me, benefit me, entitle me, privilege me. Don't cry for me, you know? So that's also the conversation going on there. And I think the other thing that is why we even do Equity Week is also to say, for folks who are looking for a community, we advocate as a community on the Hill. We do that on Thursday, this coming Thursday. You are welcome to attend. You can go on nbjc.org and register. It's free to participate, free to show up and show out. There will be a national press conference that is led by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley on reparative justice at 250 years old as a nation. That Thursday morning, you can show up and show out 9 a.m. at the House Triangle. All are invited. I would love to see people of all walks of life standing in unison and a similar vibration around these issues. And then, after all is said and done, you can let your hair down and celebrate the community at the Equity Ball, the nation's only equity ball, at the Howard Theater on Friday from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Sorry, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. at the Howard Theater. And I say all of those things is because that design is intentional. So when I talked about alignment at the top, when we all came together as a whole village of us that helped create this experience called National Equity Week, that it was about aligning to the experience. We want people to organize and activate because voting is a vibration, coordination and organization are the amplifiers. So we got to make sure that we're voting and doing other things and providing opportunities for people to activate that vibration at the nation's capital, which enslaved Black people helped build, right? The other part is to converge as a community and celebrate in Black Music Month, in Pride Month, the collective creativity and ingenuity of the ballroom community as a container for an equity conversation. So we can have a ball with a purpose. And so that's the whole experience that's available to anyone in DC, not in DC, and again, NBJC.org.
Y'all heard that? Y'all better tap in. I'm tapping in. Y'all better tap in. All right, I got two more questions and we out of here.
Okay.
I'm hateful at the end because I'm having an awesome time.
As are we.
All right, so let's be honest. A lot of folks are tired of politics right now. They feel like their vote doesn't really change much, doesn't matter. How do you convince people, especially Black, Brown, LGBTQI plus people, um, that showing up for the midterms is direly important and worth their time?
I got two quick things. The first part of the question I heard you ask was around naming and knowing that Black folks are exhausted, if only for all the reasons that we just talked about, connected to us, scratching and surviving. Take a nap, rest, celebrate the nap ministry. One of the things I miss most about being a kindergarten and third grade teacher is nap time. It's one of those things that we should all have access to, and shouldn't allow them to school out of us, like our ability to imagine and think of Afrofuturistic possibilities that aren't tainted by the worst parts of whiteness. And so I'm not trying to be hyperbolic when I say in this moment we should be sleeping in shifts. We should be again reclaiming ways of doing this thing, which is the pursuit of freedom. So rest, beloved, and enlist the support of people who can help fortify you, not just in those moments where you break, but before you get to that point. This should be a regular routine thing for us. And then the second thing is I would offer a question to those who are questioning the term that we use, the jargon, is their vote power. What we know, we have data that we collected at NBJC with some of our partners at national LGBTQ organizations led by Black folks who love Black people. I'm talking about Imana Rupert Gordon at the National Center for LGBTQ Rights, Melanie Willingham Jaggers at GLSEN, Kelly Robinson at HRC, Kiera Johnson at the National LGBTQ Task Force. We worked with a Black queer-led polling firm to collect what we have now as Black Facts data. You can also find that at nbjc.org/blackfact. And one of the things that we know is that when Black folks understand the power of our vote, we use it. And what I would offer to folks who at this moment are thinking that their vote doesn't matter is, if it didn't matter, why would they be spending so much time and energy trying to steal it from us? Trying to steal it from us. This is not hyperbole. The Supreme Court of these United States just passed a decision in Calais, a Supreme Court decision impacting New Orleans, Louisiana, but that has effectively destroyed the remaining vestiges of the Voting Rights Act. This was set up in Shelby County versus Holder in the previous administration. Even if we think about, I mentioned briefly the importance of intersectionality from a policy perspective, the gutting of women's reproductive freedom. That was a 60-year-old strategy that was enacted when they had the right pieces on the board. And they wouldn't be spending all this time and energy a gathering at places like the Heritage Foundation, led by a Black woman. Again, a reminder that all my skin folk ain't my kinfolk. This is about Black people who love Black people, not grifters who signed up to sell us out. But gathering at places like the Heritage Foundation to engage in things like Project 2025, which again, so many of us were unaware of. And when we did become aware of it, didn't take it as seriously as we should always take the project of whiteness and the elevation of the thing that has been created in this country associated with whiteness. That was a really long way of saying, um, let's ask the questions, let's follow the money, let's honor our power, and continue to stand on business.
Yeah, I totally agree. Exclamation point, exclamation point. Uh, and offer also that um, I think it's important also to realize, again, this is why for me, part of what we can see is the North Star for the resistance, because we are not the resistance, we are the future, okay? The resistance North Star is upholding the institution of racial and human hierarchy. And this is like a last gasp, as it were. And in this gasp is showing us all of the vulnerabilities around things that we were led to believe were safe. For example, Roe v. Wade. One of the things I often like to bring up about it is that we have been living under a Supreme Court decision as if it were law because the legislative body never created one, which is always an easy way out for the judicial branch because they can say, get your elected officials to pass a law. So what does it mean to live in a place where we're treating a certain right as if it were law and no law had ever been written? So when the time comes around again, keep taking notes because one of the demands is around productive health and rights. We need laws. Clearly, what we see is that the absence of laws leaves it subject to the interpretive, devices of a group of 9 people who have lifetime terms. So we need the people who have informal lifetime terms, which are our elected officials, to do something about that. Because it is a clear and reasonable argument for one body to say, well, if it matters that much, there should be a law about it.
Yeah.
The other thing around the voting rights and the voting of it all is that we must equip ourselves with language that does the work of what we want in the outcome. So for example, you want to live in a better place or you see injustices going on and then you also say your vote doesn't matter. Okay, so it won't matter then. You know, things matter that you put out in the world because they are a reflection of your divine power. So your vote is your reflection as a participant in this experience and exercise called Americanism. And if you choose to not use it, that's your choice. And to also suggest that it doesn't matter is also your choice and also false. Because again, as Dr. Johns just said, things that matter don't have a lot of opposition against them. If they don't matter, then why would you have an infrastructure of opposition? If it didn't matter, why would they be gerrymandering? If it didn't matter, why would they be eliminating Representative Jasmine Crockett? If it didn't matter, why would Representative LaMonica be under federal charges? If it didn't matter, we can keep going down a road, right? And at the same time, it won't matter if we continue to use the negative when we apply it to our power, right? So people say, well, black electeds don't matter. It's like, well, they won't if that's your paradigm. They certainly do in reality, though, which is why people are assaulting them and trying to remove them. So also understanding that just because that's what folks say, I want us to also be careful about treating that statement as reality. And I think that's part of how we got here is that we're often convincing people out of a delusion. And delusion is what takes you away from your purpose. So when people start to talk about exercises or activities that Black and queer people can do, like protest, organize, vote, advocate, that don't matter. The system is going to do what it's going to do. It's like, okay, you're living in a delusion. Because if it didn't matter, there wouldn't be all of this apparatus to make sure I don't show up. Why is that there then? If education didn't matter, there wouldn't be so many barriers to Black people getting it. If school didn't matter, there wouldn't be so many barriers to you finding a good school for your kid. These are all things that are designed that show the mattering is there, and we need to lean into that rather than be politicking around the negative aspects of how it shows up or whether or not it's going to result in the outcome we desire.
Love it. All right, last question. All right, for the both of you, the work you guys are doing is definitely y'all in it for the long haul. So if we look past 2026, what's the ultimate goal? What does the country look like where when we're actually done with the work to repair the past and treat everyone fairly?
Yeah, for me, it's always we would see a disappearance of poverty, of the body, of the condition, of the mind, of the spirit. We would see a range of African spiritual practices publicly being participated in and celebrated and taught. We would hear Black children report an unparalleled sense of possibility and imagination. We would see the disappearance of the achievement gap, the wealth gap, the digital gap. We would see all of these different health indicators decline, including cortisol and high blood pressure, because the level of peace that is available to people will dramatically increase. Because when you are going through, for example, let's just talk about you have to repair your bathroom. Encountering the damage is always an unfun experience, and then you have to hire somebody, bring them into your personal space for however long it's going to take them, always longer than they say. You might have to pay for it and all these other things. And then when it's all said and done and you're in your repaired experience, generally there's a sigh of relief that the person has. There's a sense of newfound ownership, a sense of possibility that comes from having peace around you. So also I see a perpetual feeling and imminence of peace around wherever there is discord or division, we would see unity and community.
I think that's right. I hear somebody's dog affirming the beauty in all of that. I would add three things. I think in threes, the consequence of being the grandson of a Black Baptist preacher. One is that all of this would be set to the soundtrack of Stevie Wonder singing "Love's in Need of Love Today." It would sound like children on a playground laughing and experiencing joy, the kind of joy that doesn't require them to deal with the politics that adults have created while abdicating the responsibility they have to ensure that we could all thrive. It would enable all of us to center the things that they want us to be furthest from, which in this moment, and these are all things that I've said before, hopefully they're landing as such, but it's joy. We deserve, in spite of all of this that we've been talking about, to experience the kind of joy that James Baldwin is experiencing in this picture dancing. Um, we're required to have the kind of community that would allow us to do this and to know that this is not an unworthy pursuit while talking about these really important policy fights. And all of it would be wrapped up in the kind of love that enables us to love ourselves better, to be better about loving one another, past the lies that white mediocrity continue to tell, and to love all of us such that we, again, appreciate the lesson of Fannie Lou Hamer, which is that none of us will ever get free unless and until all of us are free.
Thank y'all so much, so much for hanging out with me. Um, could you tell the people where they could find you, what y'all got going on, and all those great things?
Absolutely. This week, you can find us in Washington, D.C. at All Things Connected to Equity Week. Encourage you to join us, throw down, as VKY, our leader of policy and programs at NBJC, would say. Find all of that information at nbjc.org or on any of our digital platforms. We're at NBJC on the move. I referenced two resources earlier that I also want to end with, which is the Substack, Dr. David J. Johns or Dr. David Johns. You might not need the J for that. And the podcast is Teach the Babies. I encourage you to download the most current episode, which features Dr. Hunter and so much of what we talked about And now you got me rethinking this. We need to do that again and invite you, EL, because this was good and masterful. Now my wheels are turning. So thank you for the time and space. Thank you to the community for the gift of your time and attention.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hunter, you want to tell people where they can find you?
Oh yeah, it's Marcus Anthony Hunter everywhere. As far as I know, I'm still the only one going. There are a lot of other Marcus Hunters. I'm the only Dr. Marcus Anthony Hunter. So you can find me marcusanthonyhunter.com. You can find me on Google, on the website marcusanthonyhunter.com, at Marcus Anthony Hunter on IG. I think it's Dr. Marcus Anthony Hunter on LinkedIn. You can find the book Radical Reparations Healing the Soul of a Nation. Always recommend bookshop.org, which will filter it through one of your local independent bookstores. We love and support independent bookstores everywhere and bookstores, period. And also, you can find me as a member of the board at NBJC.org as well.
All right. Now, y'all know where y'all can find them. And y'all know where y'all can see this interview at, right? Blackout Magazine. So if you are not a subscriber of Blackout Magazine, I don't know what you doing. We got to talk about this every time I come through, y'all. Y'all need to be to subscribers so y'all know where we going, what we doing, and who we talking to. So subscribe. And until the next time, y'all be easy. All right.